Honorable Abdurrahman Tarab is the head of Technology Transfer and Innovation at the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, Netcoms. He joins us now from our Abuja studios. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, when you hear people absconding from isolation, refusing isolation and quarantine, what really comes to your mind?
Yeah, I think what comes to mind is, in the first place, how is that possible? Because you've just made mention of the fact that isolation centers have been provided. And of course, it should be expected that inbound passengers from especially these countries that are recently having very dangerous waves should be isolated in a facility that is provided, and of course for which they have already signed to. And I think if that is the case, then of course it does appear that there is a lot of people can actually escape the system, and that can be quite worrisome, especially if they are coming from some of these disturbing countries.
Indeed, quite a big risk. But in terms of technology, is there a better way to do this, preventing this kind of situation where some Nigerians are unaccounted for?
Interestingly, the guidelines that have been provided by the NCDC, and of course, and recently readopted by the task force, is quite clear because except if that has been jettisoned, ordinarily everybody expects that at the point of entry, one of the major things that you're expected to do is to surrender your passport. And then, of course, which means you will eventually be, you have to give also, while surrendering your passport, you have to provide all of your details, and which means you can be tracked. But I think most importantly, the Lagos State initiative is the way to go. They should be, the government must actually take that responsibility of ensuring that there are certain facilities that can provide isolation accommodation for inbound passengers, because that is the only way, so long as you are now recording cases where people are escaping the system. So it means you cannot continue like that. The only way to do it is to ensure that you have a facility for which, if people choose, they can have 3 or 4 classes of facility which they can be able to afford, and then ensure that there is a managed quarantine and supervised quarantine. If you don't have that, if you start to get into technology deeply, we might start to get into issues of privacy and other issues, which to me at the moment, the time frame, the time frame that will not provide for such at the moment. So the easiest way to go about it is to ensure that there is a facility that is managed and supervised, and people will have to undergo that. And in a situation where the authorities will have to allow anybody to make way home or get his own facility, I think there should be some more stringent rules guiding that.
Finally, before we let you go, is there a role that Netcom is playing in this, especially in education? You know, how is the Commission helping to untie some of these bottlenecks?
I think what the Commission has done very well in the past with regards to educating members of the diaspora, specifically on the do's and don'ts. We have, we have hosted a lot of virtual meetings with members of the CDC, with the Presidential Task Force, and with members of the diaspora in order to educate them and ensure that they get the message very well on the requirements. And I want to believe that, sincerely speaking, to a large extent, if you go through the records, the compliance rate from members of the diaspora is very, very high, and I believe it's quite impressive.
We appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Honorable Abdurrahman Tarab, Head of Technology Transfer and Innovation at Netcoms. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.